Okay, recording started.
Can. So, a good morning or good afternoon, right? Depends wherever you are, to everybody. Welcome to the call. So today's session, today we have a our partner, right, from Nutanix, Winson, right? He's going to go through today how Red Hat and Nutanix has been working together very closely, since our partnership, right? As well as what are the things that we can expect, with Red Hat and Nutanix as well. Maybe I will let Winson introduce himself.
Sure. Hi everyone. My name is Winson. I'm a senior systems engineer with Nutanix. So I've been with Nutanix for about four years and 3 months or so. Yeah. So thank you everyone for attending. Right. So Nutanix recently announced a strategic partnership together with Red Hat. I promise this is going to be my one and only marketing slide, right? But yeah, it's a strategic partnership with Nutanix and Red Hat, right? Whereby we are now jointly supporting each other's products, right? So OpenShift is going to be the premier and preferred enterprise Kubernetes deployment on top of Nutanix, right? And Nutanix AHV will be the preferred enterprise virtualization platform that Red Hat is supporting for Kubernetes and OpenShift, right? So a lot of things that our customers also asked for was a validation of RHEL, right, on top of Nutanix. This is something that we have validated and jointly supported by Red Hat and Nutanix, right? So we also have we are building together best in class infrastructure for modern applications, things with integrations with OpenShift, as well as a lot of developments are going on the Ansible space, right? Whereby we are now we have got recently announced Ansible Playbook or Ansible Runbook, or basically Ansible Collection, right? Whereby we have the ability to deploy workloads on top of Nutanix without having to write complex API calls, right? And we are also jointly developing some form of complementary data services to serve the active workloads, right? Because Nutanix is most predominantly, I mean, was known for things like the HCI, right, and things like file services, object services, volume services. So we bring all of this to the table, and together the partnership with Red Hat, we can jointly develop best-in-class complementary data services. So moving on, so we recently worked together with Red Hat, right, for a POC, and there was like close to 150 plus test cases, right, which we completed over a course of 4 days. So this was somewhere in the public sector defense space, right. So one of the two key requirements that were called out was having the ability to provision a bare metal server. So this is something that Nutanix natively can't do, right, because we are ACI. So what we had to do was to rely on our partnership with Red Hat and Ansible to actually help to provision a bare metal server. So I'll go into a bit more details later on. And as well as because this particular customer has also been using Ansible for quite a fair bit or for some time, right? And they wanted to use Ansible to actually provision virtual machines on Nutanix AHV. So for the first use case, right, whereby we used Ansible to actually provision a bare metal server, we actually wanted it to integrate with our automation tool, right, or our what we call our marketplace using Nutanix Calm. So with Nutanix Calm, what we did was we actually created a runbook, right, and that runbook was essentially just an API call, which passes over some variables such as things like the BMC IP address or the iDRAC IP address or the ILO IP address, basically the out-of-band management IP address, and as well as the credentials to actually log into that particular bare metal server. And the Ansible runbook would then run and automatically provision the bare metal server for us. Right. So what we did was we created this particular runbook, right, and published it into a marketplace. So what this allowed our customers or the customer to do was to actually click on this particular runbook, right, and they'll be greeted with this particular page, right, whereby it asks what's the password for the bare metal server, what's the username for the bare metal server, and what's the IP address for the particular bare metal server. All right. And then BB basically does an endpoint call to the Ansible virtual machine that was running on premise to actually perform that runbook of the runbook to actually launch a particular runbook. right? So after this API was executed, right, from the marketplace, then Calm will actually speak to Ansible and actually kick off the particular runbook, right? And after a couple of moments, then we start to again see that via the out of band management, we then see Ansible starting to provision the virtual machines for us, right? So this was a a pretty cool example as to how we at Nutanix had the ability to integrate with Ansible, right? And that was just the first step of it. We later moved on to a more to the second use case, right, whereby we used Ansible, or rather I worked with Anthony to actually come up with this particular playbook whereby it has the ability to deploy virtual machines on top of Nutanix AHV, right, without having an official runbook that was available by Nutanix yet, right? So as you can see in the background, right, this was supposed to be animated. I'm not sure why it's not animated at this point of time, but basically every single function, every single action within Nutanix itself is all API driven. So whatever we see on the GUI is just a wrapper to actually allow users to click and choose things, right? But everything that happens in the background is all driven via APIs. So we have a very, very comprehensive list of APIs for us to perform actions on. And with Ansible, right? Ansible, Anthony actually created Ansible playbook, right? That actually had the ability to can call all these third-party APIs. And he managed to do it in such a way whereby, it would first create the virtual machine on Nutanix AHV. And then after that, it will add the host to the Ansible automation platform's CMDB, right? Then after that, performed an RHEL 8 update of the repositories, as well as then install Apache on top of it, right? And all of this was done via the playbook itself. There was no customization done on the Nutanix aside from just deploying a master image, right? So this then really after this deployment, right, and we demonstrated this to the customer, it was actually a real great success, right? Because we could actually see the end-to-end provisioning steps all via the Ansible automation platform GUI, right? So they didn't need to, they realized that they didn't need to rely so much on just one single marketplace, which is the Nutanix car marketplace, and they could actually use things like Ansible to deploy virtual machines on top of Nutanix, right? And this is not the only thing that Ansible can do with the APIs. We can do a lot more things like, we recently Nutanix launched the ability to create VPCs on top of Nutanix AHV, right? So with a beta release of Nutanix Ansible, right? So we actually launched Ansible Collection, right, whereby we have the ability to do basically a lot of things on top of the Nutanix AHV platform. So things from very basic things from creating a virtual machine all the way up to creating site-to-site VPN connections across VPCs, right? So this is something that was just recently launched, right, and it's currently still in beta, right? So it's quite it's hosted on GitHub, and it's quite a active repository, right? So you can take a look, and the link to it is actually github.com/Nutanix/Nutanix.Ansible, right? So yeah, I'll open the floor to any questions if there is any. Anyone? Derek, Anthony, Liming, anything you want to add, or you want to show a quick demo as to how that looked like?
Yep. I can show the demo. Let me just take over the screen sharing, right, on what Winson has actually went through, right? So we can see how it looks like within the Ansible UI itself. Winson, you want to stop sharing, and then I'll just take over.
Yeah, let me see. Let me figure that out. There we go. Stop sharing.
Okay. All right. Let me just share my screen. You guys able to see the screen?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So as what Winson has mentioned, we have come up with this workflow within the Ansible automation platform itself, right? So this is where the controller is. The whole flow itself. Later on, we will go through the whole thing, right, from scratch. is that we will have to create the virtual machine, right, on Nutanix. And after that, just like what Winson mentioned, we add it to the inventory of Ansible. And then after that, we perform an upgrade. And of course, we set up the application. Of course, over here, we have chosen something that's more simple, right? It's Apache that we are installing. It can be actually anything, right? So we all know that it can be something that's more complex. We can actually have a more complex workflow, or that we can include things like rollback, for instance. Doesn't really matter. And all these playbooks, I have it inside my Git repository, right? If you guys are interested, just feel free to take a look. And let me just run through the front part of it. So you can see over here, this is the Nutanix Prism Central Dashboard. So what we have is you can see different matrices inside here. Right, if you were to click on the hamburger button, you can see the compute storage policies, network securities, and different things. What we have in the VM list today, we have the golden image that we are going to use as the base image, right, for provisioning the RHEL 8 VM. So that's where this thing stays over here. We name it as the RHEL 8 golden images. And after which, if you look at some of the stuff within the network security side, subnets, we are using VLAN 104 in this case for the demonstration. So again, we go back here, and later on we will come back. As what Winson has mentioned, there is a very well-defined set of APIs that is provided by Nutanix. And of course, the way to do it as of now, before the collection is ready, is to kind of leverage on the URI module that we have out of the box in Ansible to interact with all the different API endpoints that's available and exposed by Prism in this case, right? So as long as the functionality exists within here and is exposed, we will be able to leverage on that. In this case, what we actually make use of, right, is the VM endpoint. You can see over here that the VM's endpoint has different methods that we can leverage and use, right? So the various methods, for instance, in this case, for creating a new virtual machine, if we access this particular endpoint by passing in all the different required variables inside and the JSON object that we send through, we will be able to create the VM. There is also well documented in terms of the response that we are expecting to get, that we will then be able to use it for the rest of the workflow. For instance, retrieving information like what IP address has been assigned to the virtual machines if we are running on the DHCP kind of a network, right? As opposed to giving it a manual IP of static IP, right? So those are things that is readily available, right? And looking at the playbook itself, what's going on is that we will be able to run this particular playbook, which creates the VM. The first thing that we do is we retrieve information pertaining to the golden image that we saw earlier. We get the information from there, and we retrieve information like subnet, the cluster information, before we combine all this information to create the virtual machine. And the last piece is really to get the VM attribute, right? So step by step, we pull back all these things in a dynamic fashion without having to know all these UUIDs beforehand. And this is actually how that JSON object file will actually look like when we try to create the VM by calling Nutanix, right? So over here, we have the dashboard, right? So you can see over here that we have the project for the Nutanix demo. As always, right, we always want to make sure that everything is source control. We point it back into the Git repository. Then over here, of course, different hosts that we have, the Bootstrap servers, as well as the web servers. Those are the stuff that I think we can show later on as well. The front piece that Winson was talking about, setting up the bare metal using Ansible. So this is one single flow. What we have today at this point in time is just those servers that's needed for the bootstrapping of the bare metal, right? But we can see that the VM that we are going to create is actually not, has not been created in this case, and it will be automatically added and updated inside the inventory as we move along this particular workflow. So we go and look at the template itself. We have multiple templates, and we really are interested in the workflow template that we shown earlier on, right? When we launch a template, obviously, you can pass in different parameters over here. We just expose a certain set, which are basic, like the name, the CPU, as well as the RAM. Subnet information, we kind of assume that we are using VLAN 104 in this case, but it's up to us to go and choose and decide on what the survey form will look like, right? So over here, we just set up 3 variables. And once we're happy with it, as usual, we will just hit the next button, preview, and after that, we will launch it. So when we launch, what Ansible is doing is that we're just calling, right, the target. Based on what was written in the playbook, we will retrieve all this required information and create the virtual machine. You can see, for instance, over here that the state is in pending, right? So that's the kind of response that is being sent back by Nutanix when we perform an API call. And based on that, we will be able to do things like retrieving the attributes of the virtual machine that has been created. We are keeping track of all the information that's written from Prism and checking whether or not the system or the VM is fully up. So in this case, the virtual machine itself has actually came up into the login prompt, right? So we will just be continuing to pull the information until it has an IP address that we can leverage on. So you can see over here that it is continuously doing the polling, retrieving all the required attributes. And once the IP address is being retrieved, then we will capture it as part of the requirements for the following workflow. So you can see over here that it took us 2 times to go and pull back the information. Right, so this is the dynamic IP address that is being assigned, the .115 IP, which corresponds to what is inside the Prism Central. So all these informations will all be in sync. Once we have this thing, we will be able to add it to the host inventory. And then with this, we'll be able to log into the target and be able to perform the rest of the stuff, like updating the VM itself. Right. So over here, the workflow will go into updating the RHEL 8. Once we look at the RHEL 8, for instance, you can see that we set up the repo and then we upgrade all the packages. In this case, there's nothing to upgrade, but it's the same. Right. So then towards the very end, it sets up the Apache service itself. You can see over here that we are just installing the service, making sure that everything is up, updating the firewall policies, as well as making sure that the index HTML is working the way that it should be, right? We updated the content. So over here, everything is all successful. You can see that the workflow is all good. If we were to go back to the inventories, we will be able to see that now we have 1 more node added, which is the test VM. And this is the IP address that is being allocated. We are all inside of the private subnet, right? So over here, we can see that 172.16.104, which is the 104 network, right? We can see the Apache service running on this particular server, right? So these are the information, right, that we can render, using the template module, and we just pass all this information into the index HTML so that it gets reflected on the web server itself. Right, so in a very simple fashion, right, we managed to get everything done in one single flow, and these are all done using the Ansible workflow automation. Any question on this, or any comments on what you guys or what we have shown? Yeah, pretty quiet crowd.
Yeah, guys, if you have any questions, unmute yourself, or you can put in the chat as well if you have any other questions. Or if you have any other questions, pertaining to Ansible itself, you also can ask here, right? Today's session is to...
Yeah. I mean, I know some
away,
customers have done something like this in the past as well. In fact, I'm not sure. Rias is also on the call. He probably has done something similar. Anyway, this is showing how we have worked on Prism Ansible can all come together. We can do a workflow. This collection that is being worked on by Nutanix today, right? Once it becomes something that is certified, then again, it will be backed by Nutanix and also by Red Hat from that perspective, right? So all those are the stuff that we are looking at. We are trying to do more things together. Okay, if there is no question, we can just do a very quick one on the other ones, which basically shows the bare metal provisioning piece, right? So over here, this is what happens before we actually set up the virtual machine, right? So what we are doing over here is that we will set up the bare metal from scratch. So let's say you have a bare metal, a Dell in this case, it can be HP, it could be some other brands. Doesn't really matter, right? So as long as you have the DHCP server, we are able to host all the repos and image. Then from here, it's just basically using Ansible to go and kick off all the deployment. But in particular, over here, what you're seeing is the console.redhat.com, where we have all the different collections. If you were to look at it, the stuff that we were looking at back then is really the Dell EMC Open Manage, which is the Dell service that we have in this case. You just have to do a search for the keyword. You will be able to, let's see a question from Dinesh. Oh yeah, in the train. Actually, for the API piece, we have been using URI module for the most part if it is something that is not available today, right? We know that Nutanix is already working on the collections, which is going to make it much easier for us to interact with the Nutanix Prism Central. So definitely we are trying to create more and more VMware Guest. There is the VMware REST API module, right? So we are actually looking at some of these things as well. So if you were to look at this, for instance, if you clear the filters, this is the one that is really based on all the APIs. Of course, the stuff is that you need to see the difference, right? So over here, this is more pertaining towards the version 7, right? So the VMware Guest is using PyVormi, right? So that is something that we were using since the vCenter 6 days. So this one is more for the vCenter 7. But regardless, you can see that we are providing support and that we are looking at how we can interact with more of all these different kind of platforms. And it will continue to increase. So you can see now it's 114. When we took the video few months ago, no, last year, it's in December, it was around 108. So within 2 months, we have like another 6 more. So we are just increasing in terms of the platforms that we are supporting over time. And it's actually quite a fair bit of stuff that gets updated over time. All right, thanks for the question, Dinesh. So let's just see, right? So over here, this is the Dell certified content. And you can see over here that we have different contents that is available and given by managed together with the Dell EMC team, right? So 68 different modules, we can do different stuff. Some of the important things that you could see over here when it comes to managing, right, hardware, it could be things like iDRAC, right? We have BIOS module, we have think further down, you will see the Redfish module as well that we use to interact with all these systems. So we will be using some of these modules, right, in this particular demo just to control the Dell bare metal server, right, and then to make sure that we configure all those things nicely. Let me just skip through some of this in the front part. So this is kind of how you can get it, right? So you can see over here that this is the login screen, right? We are able to log in manually. Just wanted to show you the initial state. The virtual console itself, if you were to look at it, we are at the BIOS screen. We will actually be just using Ansible to go and do all the controlling, like getting it to do a PXE boot, and then we will make sure that everything gets installed properly by the kickstart script, right? And then everything will be driven actually from the Ansible controller itself, right? So same stuff, right? We can see that these are the two hosts. We have a Bootstrap server. We have a web server that houses all the different packages. And we will pass in some of this information so that Ansible will know how to configure and generate the script that's needed in order to perform the stuff, right? So you can see the first step that we do is we generate the kickstart config file that will include all the information that is needed. And then we start the actual Bootstrap process, all controlled from the Ansible perspective. You can see, for instance, we have the iDRAC IP address, we have the user, and then the password, and where we can actually pull down all the packages that's needed from the web service in order to do the actual installation itself. And once we hit next, it will just pass in all this information, generate the file that's needed, and then we will do an install on the bare metal node. So pretty fast, right? The file has been generated. We will then go back into the actual deployment itself. Let's just wait for the output, right? So you can see over here that we do things like creating the config file for pixielinux.cfg. We ran a restore con to go and change the permissions. We power on the servers, we reset, get it to do a one-time boot. Everything is all controlled from Ansible, right? So of course, you can do all these things in a very prescriptive and deterministic fashion. I have fast forward some of the play over here just to make sure that this thing actually goes through much faster than how it was. I mean, we have been using this for a long time. You know that it goes through all the hardware checking. It takes a while, right? But all this stuff, basically, it's all within the control of the Ansible Playbook that we have created. The DHCP starts, once it gets the IP address, it starts to do the actual installation of the server itself with all the relevant information, in this case for RHEL 8.5, right? So it sets up all the relevant information in terms of providing the IP address, what kind of stuff we want to install, and you will go and install all the relevant packages, making sure that everything is done in this case, right? So it's fully automated, right? It saves a lot of time for the administrator as well. So once we do the one-time boot using the modules from the Dell site, we wait for it to bootstrap. Right? So once we are able to get the SSH connectivity towards the target, Ansible will know that this thing is actually done in terms of doing all the relevant bootstrap, and it will just make sure that the boot sequence is correct. Right? So after this, we want to make sure that it always boots from the hard disk, right? We don't want it to, do a network boot, for instance. So those are things that we have, and you can see everything is actually done nicely. In fact, it took 16, 17 minutes to do it, but just imagine, right? If you do it yourself, you may still have to go and key in all the relevant information and configuration files and making sure that everything works. In this case, you just need to run the workflow, and pretty much you can go for coffee or you can do something else, and you just have to wait for this thing to tell you that everything is back to normal. And this kind of templating is actually very useful when you do data center automation, which is something that we do for some of our customers in the region as well, when they have to set up new bare metals. But in this case, it's Dell. It could even be something like setting up EXXI, which is what we did showcase for one of the other customers as well. Setting up EXXI, setting up vCenter, everything automatically using Ansible, right? Configuring the storage, network, making sure that everything works nicely, right? So different use cases and different things that we could actually do from this perspective. Any questions? Yeah. I can't do the rack and stack, but I don't mind charging to your credit card for ordering a server. That one I think we can automate. All right. Any questions from anyone? Right. I know that we've been talking a lot for the last 35 minutes. Just wanted to see whether you have any questions or comments or feedbacks.
So I think a lot of good stuff, right? Shown by Anthony and Winson, and I think the overall team that's handling the use case itself. I think Nutanix and Red Hat will have quite a strong partnership, right, going forward. From Red Hat side, we do see a lot of roadmap with Ansible. We do see roadmap, especially with OpenShift as well. And that is something that customers can expect, right, in the upcoming year and hopefully for the next few years also. Yeah, I think anybody have any questions or anything they want to feedback or comment about anything?
Or even the next session, right? What
What do you
actually
guys
hear?
think you want to see for the
Yeah.
next session?
Exactly.
We have invited Winson from Nutanix this time around. Maybe there's something that you want to see for the next time.
Or
One
even
of the things, one of the things that we discussed for next session is to actually showcase the automation mesh, right? Which was something in our plate for quite a bit. I mean, because we wanted to see from the engineering team how but there were some kinks and some bugs here and there, but we just wanted to ensure that it was ready for us to do a proper showcase to you guys. So probably in the next month is maybe one of the topics that we can look at.
Yep. I mean the builders,
explore more builder, right?
maybe
Automation hub.
we can see whether there are other stuff that we can do.
Yeah. Is there anything particular for builder that you would like to look at?
Yeah, Dinesh, when you say a deeper session, you have something in mind? I know you're in the train, so probably typing.
Automation hub. We show. Did we show automation hub?
We did.
The...
I think we showed the on-prem version as well.
Okay.
But no worries, Ginesh. We can
Yeah.
take it offline. Self-hosted. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, we can look at it.
What about the rest on the course, right? I mean, I think some of you might have been using Ansible for some time. Are there any specific asks, challenges? Because I think we still have a bit of time left in this call, right? And I think right now it's more of an open forum, open discussion. Any questions for Derek, Anthony, or even for Winson himself, right? I mean, feel free to just ask in unmute yourself and ask, or put it on the chat. We'll try our best to answer some of your questions or even assist in some of your challenges. It's a quiet group
shy.
today. Yes.
It's today. I think
Right.
all waiting for lunch.
Perhaps we should do a lunch session next time.
Yeah, I think it will be good. We can do a lunch and learn.
Correct. Have we introduced Vino yet to the community?
We may have last year.
Last one?
But we can introduce again. But it's always,
why not?
good.
Yeah, Vino, go.
Yeah, why don't you just introduce yourself?
Hey, okay. Sure. My name is Vinod Kumar. So I'm actually together with Anthony here. I just joined Red Hat. It's been 4 months right now for me. I did attend actually earlier session, so you would have seen me on the session, the previous sessions. So, yeah, just shoot me if you have any questions. Yeah.
Cisco background,
Vinod
right?
is like a Cisco expert.
Yes.
Cisco guru.
Yes,
Yeah,
Never
I used to
automation.
work. I used to work for Cisco, handling their automation software, SDN, and software automation. Yeah.
I'm sure he's definitely CCIE, CCE, don't know what certified.
No. I don't know.
Yes. I mean, even for network automation, right? I mean, like we mentioned quite a couple of times, right? It's a interesting area, right? For Ansible to work in the network automation. You wouldn't have believed that, how Ansible has gone from automation for infrastructure to, networking, today, right? So
Yeah.
Yes.
Hi.
Long
Yeah.
time.
Yep.
How's
How are you?
everything?
So I'm first time attending this session.
It's good to see you.
Yeah, I haven't seen him for a while.
Yeah.
I think you guys are also using Prism, if I'm not wrong.
Yes, we are using it. Sorry, I was in meeting. I missed it. First part of the Nutanix session.
No worries.
We are using it, but we haven't used any playbook for Nutanix.
I think it's time that we can start to explore. We have Winson here, and then we have the collections that's going to be ready. Definitely, there's a lot of things that we can do. I mean, what I did was more like a showcase to say that it can be done. But definitely, once the actual collections is ready, we will be able to do it.
Yeah, because collection makes it so much simpler to just consume, right? Instead of
what Winson is showing over here.
Yeah, so this is the official Nutanix Ansible collection, right? So as you can see, it's hosted on GitHub. So it's github.com/Nutanix/Nutanix.Ansible. I'll just ping it in the chat as well.
Yes,
Yep.
I got it.
Yeah, so this is a rather active repository. So our engineering
14
folks
hours
are
ago,
constantly,
right? 13 hours ago, everyone is committing.
our engineering folks are constantly committing code, and it's got all the new fancy cutting edge features as well, right? So things like VPCs. So VPCs was something that we just released less than a year ago. We've already got the collection for that already. So the subnets, floating IP addresses, policy based routings. So all of these are things that we can do with the Ansible collection already. So we expect to see more features and functionality being added into it while we are working towards GA and waiting for Red Hat to officially certify. So that's something that you all can take a look into.
I think Reyes is quite a big user of Nutanix, if I recall correctly. I remember we had this conversation in the past.
Yes, we are using Nutanix. So do you have any session related to the automation hub?
We can do that. I mean, if that is something that Ginesh was asking, if
Ginesh is suggested.
Let's have one. We can just mention it, and maybe we can spend some time on it next session if that's what you guys are thinking that it's interesting.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Hi.
Hello.
I was wondering, I saw some dashboards during the video. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to catch everything the whole time. But do you provide APIs to allow people to integrate the data that you were displaying on the dashboards with to push it to another data center, for example, if a company has a data warehouse or data lake and so forth?
Well, the thing is, we have well-defined APIs on the Ansible controller, which I can find that list for you. But basically, there's a link that will tell you how to use all the APIs to call Ansible controller. And at the same time, we can also call any system that talks in REST, as long as we know the endpoint and the response, so that we will be able to perform those kind of stuff that is needed. So data warehouse wise, definitely there are some customers who was talking to us in the past, things like your talent, and then Spark and all those stuff. But the thing, of course, is more around the fact that I think there is Airflow, right, which is another product that kind of does something similar, using direct acyclic graphs. So those are things that we can explore, right? It's just that we are not showing it in this case. But as long as there's API, as long as we know the response, you can trigger us, we can trigger you. It's a closed loop system. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I think Vinod has pasted the API reference.
Yeah, I think that's also how Calm today integrates with Ansible controller, right?
Correct. In
I-
order
I-
to achieve that closed loop, we do the
closed loop.
same thing for ITSM like ServiceNow. You know, we can do it with Jira Service Desk, those things, and we do GitOps as well. If you wanted to do things directly from GitHub or GitLab, you can do a commit, merge. It can trigger us. Hey, thanks, Rias. It can then trigger us to go and perform, you know, a task, right? So we do those kind of stuff.
Yeah,
We actually did something recently, right, Li Ming, together on the GitOps for golden images.
Correct,
creation.
exactly. So there's multiple ways of triggering Ansible controller, and some of the products out there, they do already have native integration. For instance, like ServiceNow with an Ansible controller, right? I think even from a Nutanix perspective, Calm is working on something that, because today I think the demo that we did was a manual integration, meaning that you call the API directly. But like say, some of these vendors, they have native integration, so it's all baked into the product that they offer. Right? Just like Nutanix Calm, right? I think in the future, in part of the Nutanix blueprint, you drag and drop, you can just specify the Ansible controller IP, you know, username, password, and the API endpoint, and you know the JSON file that you want to pass along, and that's all. That's all you need to do. Right? It's all part of the product integration that you know we have with some of our partners.
Correct. Like vRealize automation, some of those things that a lot of people are using, right? So different stuff.
Right, so that's just calling Ansible, but then of course Ansible needs to perform some automation task, right? Some automation tasks that we then integrate with third party, like a data warehouse, or in provisioning a VM, or provisioning a bare metal, or doing config management, right? So that's the way how the flow typically would look like today.
Yep.
Okay, that's good. Any other questions?
Yes, we are good.
Yeah, I guess if there's no other questions, right, then I would like to thank everybody for their time to attend the session today. I would like to thank Winson especially, right, for being here as the main partner of the session today, right? The
Yeah.
main guy.
Time with us.
Yeah,
And we
main
really
guy
look
with us.
forward towards the collections that Nutanix
Yeah.
is building. I'm sure it's going to be very exciting.
Yes.
Yep, it will be. It will be.
A lot of new features coming.
Yeah. Can't talk too
so
much about it,
yeah.
but yeah, you know, definitely keep your eyes out. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Then.
Okay,
right?
thank you, everyone.
We'll
Yeah.
see
Thank
you
you,
the next
everyone.
time.
Thank you, everyone.
Cheers.
All right, thank you.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.